All right, joining me now here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show once again is my friend Candice Bernd. Candice is a journalist and assistant editor at TruthOut, which you can find at truth-out.org. You can also follow her on Twitter at Candice Bernd. Candice, thank you so much for being on the show again.
Hey, Matthew. Thanks for having me back on.
All right, so Candice, some citizens and officials in the state of Ohio are trying to protect themselves and their communities from the dangers of hydraulic fracking. You recently wrote about their efforts for TruthOut. Tell us about what's happening in Ohio.
Yeah, so Ohio seems to be the kind of latest battleground when it comes to this sort of tension that's been playing out between conservative lawmakers who are trying to take away communities' rights to do all sorts of things and kind of preempt them and give all of their power over to the state. And in Ohio, this is really playing out, and I've been reporting a lot about this, particularly in the context of fracking, but it's important to note that this is happening on all kinds of issues. This is a preemption strategy whereby conservative, right-wing ideologues will give away, a community's right to, say, increase minimum wage. This has happened to quite a few cities in states that are trying to hike the minimum wage, and all other sorts of progressive victories that cities have really championed. Especially cities in the South, where it's really hard to pass these sort of progressive victories. And it's a lot easier to do good at the local level. In Ohio, what's happening right now is about 100 local officials, including like county commissioners, city councilors, mayors, folks like that, have kind of issued this letter to Governor John Kasich's, kind of asking him to restore their ability to regulate and or ban fracking in their communities. And this has come after a number of blows from the courts, which has kind of upheld this preemption law that they've had on the books for quite some time now. Their preemption law goes back to 2004, and what it says is basically that the communities can't regulate fracking, that only the Ohio Department of Natural Resources can, and that's their state regulator. So they are pushing back hard on this. They are dealing with the particularly waste dumping in their communities that they are trying to regulate. And while it doesn't look like, John Kasich is really going to respond to this call and the courts are really set up against them, they are being quite smart in the fact that they're outlining a number of strategies that can be used by communities that are facing this sort of preemption threat across the country, including Texas, Oklahoma. A similar bill has advanced in Florida this year. One of the city council members, his name's James O'Reilly, he kind of outlined a number of really good workarounds for communities that have sort of been preempted at this point. He talks about putting in things like noise ordinances to restrict the sound of these operations at nighttime, especially. Putting in things like increased weight limits on the roads so that these heavy truckloads that are carrying this waste cannot go across certain roads. He also talks about putting in ordinances that don't specifically mention the words oil and gas in them, but that target injection wells especially. He thinks that this is a really good strategy. And it can't be overturned by courts, he says, because it can't be said to be regulating oil and gas activity. So that's kind of a unique approach they're taking. And this call in Ohio follows on a really important kind of back and forth between the state. In my state of Texas, I live in Denton, and Denton banned fracking, and it was the first city in Texas to do so. And it's been an onslaught, since that happened. We've gone back and forth with the state, and recently we had to basically take our ban off of the books after the state passed a similar preemption bill, because it was the most strategic thing that we could possibly do. The reasoning behind us repealing our own fracking ban is that our city council people said that they didn't want to give a bad precedent in court, because if we were to challenge this new state law we're facing, it would only add fuel and give further precedent to the state law. And so Texas and Ohio and other states facing this are kind of banding together, creating these coalitions between cities. In Texas, the bill that we're facing, HB 40, sorry, that is my cat.
Hello, kitty.
Yep, she's great. HB 40 preempts more than 300 cities' abilities to regulate oil and gas operations, and so now we're basically looking at forming these alliances, because this is a really sweeping bill, and basically forming these alliances to try to build up enough constituent, firepower to go back to the legislature again, and try to get this overturned. And Ohio is looking at the same kind of thing, where you're really seeing this local convergence of cities, of elected officials who are trying to figure out ways and strategies whereby they can come together and really fight back, against this aggressive state assault on, your local community rights. So.
Yeah, you and I have talked before when we were talking about Denton, just the utter hypocrisy of all the right-wingers who are pushing forward these laws where again, right-wingers left and right are all about, local control and get big government off our back. And here you actually had, in many of these cases, especially Denton, an actual community saying, okay, we have local control. We don't want fracking because of all the health hazards, all the horrible things that fracking causes. We as a community, as a local community, have chosen not to do this. And then they're like, I guess we don't really believe in local control. So let's head back to Ohio for a little bit, because in the TruthOut piece, and again, I'm talking to my friend Candice Bernd, which you can find the report at truth-out.org. You go into detail a little bit about the state senator who initially passed this in 2004 and his ties to the oil and gas industry. Tell us a little about the senator and who got it passed and how they actually got it through.
Right. That is a former state senator named Thom Hartmann, and he went on to become the Senate president in Ohio during the time that he served. And basically why he is important is because when I report on this, obviously this is an issue that's near and dear to my heart because I live in Denton, and, seeing what our town has gone through has really made me interested and curious in following this local control issue. And whenever I report on this, I try to fit it into this ALEC strategy. I mean, this is definitely something that is backed by the American Legislative Exchange Council. And Thom Hartmann, when I was looking at Ohio, certainly fits in right into this strategy, this kind of program that they're using. Hartmann put this preemption bill in 2004. He is oil-soaked, just like the guys in Texas, just like the guys in Oklahoma and Florida. They're all oil-soaked. He received about $31,000 from from oil and gas interests in Ohio, and that's what we can tell from the reported. Who knows? Well, actually, this was in 2004, so Citizens United hadn't been in place there yet. But regardless. Hartmann also was, at that time, a member of ALEC's Energy, Environment, and Agriculture Task Force. And so, his preemption bill really fits into this because in Texas, the author of our preemption bill, his name is Phil King. He's a co-author. The main author is Drew Darby. But Phil King serves as ALEC's national chair this year. And ALEC's website offers this kind of model legislation where they say, where it's a total model bill for preempting, cities, communities' ability to regulate fracking. Here's how you hand over all of the authority on fracking over to the state. That's what ALEC's website offers. And so this guy back then was an ALEC member. He was on the Energy Environment Task Force. And then once he was out of Senate, he went on to become a lobbyist for BP America and for the Ohio Oil and Gas Association. And so it just fits the bill as far as, this has been a long time ALEC's strategy to preempt communities' rights. It's basically like as soon as these communities start to kind of grumble about fracking and having to live with the impacts of being adjacent to these pad sites, the awful noise, the truck traffic, the constant emissions, it's like you're under siege when you're living next to a frack site, basically. And as soon as these communities start to grumble about this, bam, they take away their ability to do anything about it, is basically how it's going. And ALEC has kind of been behind this for a really long time, and they're really starting to ramp it up across the South. And I think Denton's fracking ban is a huge part of this, because I think when these guys saw the blow that came to the oil and gas industry in the heart of the oil and gas empire, where they've always held, unbridled political and economic power, I think they really decided that they needed to put this strategy in, and ramp it up. But yeah, so Tom Niehaus fits this bill along with all of the other lawmakers who are kind of introducing these bills. They're all oil soaked, and they all have connections to ALEC. In some capacity or other.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned, you mentioned it earlier about how a lot of the people in Ohio, they were mostly, in addition to the fracking, they're concerned about the waste that fracking causes. And I think it was Niehaus in 2010 as well, who actually made an amendment to his bill, not to regain local control, but to say you can't actually regulate the waste of fracking as well, correct?
Right, yeah. I believe he amended that in 2010, yeah?
2010, yeah.
Right, and this goes back to what the city councilor James O'Reilly was saying about kind of doing these workarounds where you can put in ordinances that can regulate the injection wells, but don't say the words oil and gas, right? Because as soon as you do that, you can be challenged in court. But yeah, I mean, they have especially been hit hard with this waste issue, and as soon as they started to grumble about these injection wells, about the waste, about the earthquakes. Ohio has been hit with a ton of earthquakes because of these injection wells. Amended that law to make sure that they also couldn't do anything about that. So, yeah, it certainly is part of that pattern.
Yeah, but one thing, going back even to Ohio again, what's sort of inspiring, and inspiring what you guys do in Denton, Texas as well, is that you guys are, again, faced with, obviously, the oil and gas industry and dirty energy industry has, unlimited deep pockets on this type of thing. They have ALEC backing them up. What's inspiring to see is the fact that activists in Ohio, and I know the activists down in Denton where you are trying to do everything you possibly can, be it little regulations, ways to do it with, again, like the noise regulation, the weight regulations, just trying to figure out any ways to just sort of slow this tide. Because again, every day that you keep this stuff in the ground is a better day for the local community and the overall environment, because again, fracking, when you do hydrofracking, it releases methane, which is a greenhouse gas, which does in fact very much contribute to climate change and global warming.
Right, and that's actually tonight in Denton we are having a city council meeting tonight where we're looking at how to strengthen our existing ordinance, because now that we've been preempted, we kind of have to fall back on the drilling ordinance we had before, except we're facing, it's got to be amended and it has to be able to comply with our new bill. But just tonight we're meeting with the city council. The city council is having a meeting about how to strengthen our ordinance to the best of our ability. And yeah, you bring up a great point about the methane. I mean, it's been frustrating, having to, in Texas, a lot of the activists have had to play a sort of political game where climate change and the importance of the idea of keeping it in the ground had to be minimized because
it's Texas and everything, and you bleed oil down there, essentially.
It's really unfortunate, but I can tell you that a lot of the activists here that have worked behind this are very much concerned about climate change, and that's one of the driving reasons, that they were for the ban. But it's not totally about that. I mean, it's a lot of other things. A lot of people here really do live incredibly close. I mean, we're talking now it's within 50 feet. We used to say, oh my God, it's 200 feet. Now it's even within 50 feet because we have this issue with reverse setbacks. It used to be we just had to worry about them putting in an oil and gas well close to a home. Now what we have to worry about is a developer building incredibly close to an already existing oil and gas well. And that has happened in Denton's vintage neighborhoods, where literally, I could try to describe this scene for you. When you enter a neighborhood, there's usually a little sign that says, "Welcome to Oak Village Estates," or some other kind of little name. Mm-hmm. And literally in vintage neighborhood, that sign that says "Welcome to the neighborhood" is also the wall or the barrier to a oil and gas storage tank, an existing pad site that's there. And just across the street from it, there's a house that's being built there. And it's kind of an incredible scene because it's literally 50 feet or less. And we've had them explode in Denton, and so I'm just frightened when I think about what happens if this thing explodes. It could actually kill people, if the explosion was bad enough. And so that's something we've had to deal with. But, when it comes to climate change, that during the campaign, when it was to pass it, we definitely played up more of the proximity issues than the climate change issues. But yeah, I mean, every little thing that communities can do at this point, these little workarounds, if you have been preempted, all of it is valuable to some degree or other in terms of just trying to limit and keep this stuff out. Every drop counts at this point.